That's a pretty cool looking Explorer. I wonder what's in this box. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, I finally found one of these things. Thanks to the help of a viewer of the show, he remembered his buddy had one of these. He never really learned how to play guitar, so we linked up and we made a deal on this. So let's go ahead and get this thing open. And so far, things are actually looking pretty clean on this one, minus not having a handle. Usually these Explorer cases get really beat up, but let's go ahead and see what is the Scorpions Explorer all about. That's what it's all about. This one doesn't quite look the same as the poster anymore. It's very yellow, but hey, that's the name of the game when it comes to vintage guitars. So this was the signature color for Matthias Jobs. He later on got a model called the E90. That was kind of another official, unofficial signature guitar of his, but he's been well known for having this unique paint design on many of his instruments. So it's 3 stripes here, 1 stripe over here. A long time ago, I had an Epiphone that somebody had modified in that unique way. And before that guitar, I didn't even know these band members by their names or any of their designs. I just thought it looked cool, so I've always liked it because of that. I am not a child of the 80s, unfortunately, but 80s music is awesome. But I now have a pretty cool Scorpions set of guitars here because these were part of the Designer series. And if you're not familiar with what the Designer series is, here's what they look like. Some of them had weird squigglies on them. Some of them had just really cool lines. There were so many different options as well as one-off opportunities that you could find. It was basically Gibson trying to find a way to market the then new stripped-down alder body Flying Vs and Explorers that later became synonymous with thrash metal and the 80s in general. But if lines, squigglies, and stripes aren't your thing, there were also battle flag editions, such as the design we talked about in this controversial episode, as well as like the Union Jack Explorer and those same designs on other guitars. However, to really boost sales, they also partnered with the Scorpions to give them a signature color. So is this technically a signature guitar? I mean, you gotta remember, in the 80s, signature guitars weren't necessarily a huge thing for Gibson. I mean, you can make the argument that, hey, you know, the Barney Kessels, the Les Paul signature being an actual signature for the man Les Paul. You also have Trini Lopez. I mean, there's been signature guitars for as long as there have been famous guitarists. But as far as how we think of them today, they really were birthed in the 90s. So this is like kind of getting to where we are today, but not quite there. I talk more about that in the Flying V episode of the Scorpions. So needless to say, these are pretty cool. I mean, white Explorers, I think James Hetfield, but the additional design here just kind of makes it for somebody completely different. It also does continue on to the sides, but what I've always liked about these models is the fact that they have a matching white headstock, just to take them over the top a little bit more. And usually the Designer series guitars did not get custom shop edition decals, but since these were a limited edition finish that were a little bit more special than all the other ones, these did indeed get it. But this one looks like it is a 1985 model. And is actually in surprisingly really good shape. I mean, we got a couple of stand marks on this one, unfortunately. But like, as far as nicks and dings go, it's actually pretty clean. I think after I polish it up, it'll be pretty nice. Now, as is pretty typical on these design ones, it looks like it was just some sort of an overlay that they used, and they will finish, check, and crack at different rates than the wood. And in fact, just as an add-on, that's something else that made my controversial custom even more different, is the fact that that one was painted and was not produced with a graphic like these. But you'll notice the ones that they're holding in this photo aren't exactly the same. That one has gold hardware, it has a pick guard, but it still has the matching white headstock, and if you go over here, that's Rudolph's actual 70s one that he did up with that paint scheme. It still has the pick guard. But there we go, what a beautiful match made in heaven here. It's so great to see them side by side. They're cool in their own rights, but as a set, they're just complete. So let's go ahead and throw the Explorer on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our Scorpions Explorer, it cleaned up quite nicely. All that yucky gunk is gone, but it did reveal a couple of nicks and dings in the top. I'd say the worst one's right here, and I did see some significant buckle worming in the back, but this is a pretty rockin' guitar with a crazy paint job. It's a miracle that it didn't get played more. But let's go ahead and check out our pickups. So I don't even have to take these out to tell you they're dirty fingers. How do I know that? And more importantly, how can you know that? Is it has a double row of adjustable pole pieces. Whereas most Gibson and other branded pickups have a single row of adjustable ones, and these other ones are flat. They're called slug coils. Now the Scorpions V that we documented last time, it actually had Tim Shaw PAFs in it, which was a unique feature to that particular one, because typically you'll find dirty fingers in these 80s Explorers and Flying Vs. So this one, the pickups date to 1983, and the bridge pickup, it's not quite legible, but I would assume it's a very close match.
But Dirty Fingers are hot pickups, usually around 16k ohms. Our bridge is 15.58, our neck is about 15.6, and the middle for fun, 7.8. Now this example has yellowed quite a bit, but you can kind of see what the original finish looked like right here. But an even better indicator is looking inside your neck pickup cavity, where you can actually see the alder body. We can also see some sort of a signature right there. And here's what our bridge pickup cavity looks like. Similar stuff going on here. But besides all the stand rash that's on here, we can tell it was on a stand because it's yellowed so much. And look, you can actually see the outlines of the finish where the bridge and tailpiece were hiding it so it didn't get aged as much. The bridge is your regular Nashville style one, but something else that makes the Scorpions Explorer unique is the fact that it does have gold hardware. So you've got a full weight tailpiece that's also gold, and in case you didn't notice, your pole pieces are also gold on this. Strap buttons, etc. Everything's gold. So as far as your control on these 84 style Explorers, you have a volume for your neck, volume for your bridge, and a master tone. These were produced right when Gibson started to change the style of knobs they used, or their suppliers started to use different materials. They just stopped aging after about 1985. However, I am suspicious that this toggle switch tip has been replaced, because it doesn't quite screw all the way down. But this thing's got finish checking all over it. For whatever reason, every Gibson made with an alder body checks like this. I've always hypothesized it's because the wood didn't get completely dried. Maybe it's just how the wood is. But to be honest, I kind of like the finish checking lines that are right here because it reminds me of that Zebra Explorer that we saw in this auction hunting episode because it adds like some stripes to it. It's kind of cool. But moving on from our alder body, we have a maple neck on these with an ebony fretboard. You can find both ebony and rosewood fretboards on these 84 style Explorers. This one having ebony is not necessarily special, which I've always been a big fan of 80s dot inlays. They just have a slightly different aesthetic to it. I think it's because they're slightly smaller and they used cooler looking materials. But the frets, they were really rusty when I first got this guitar, but they cleaned up pretty nicely. But we've got a 24 3/4 inch scale length, 12 inch fretboard radius, a nut width of 1.71 inches, and that increases to 2.05 by the 12th. With a first fret neck depth of 0.82, that increases to 0.99, but it feels very similar. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. These are definitely slim 60s neck profiles. I mean, they do chunk up a little bit right here, but it's not highly noticeable. Moving on to the headstock, I almost let this scare me away from buying this example. It's a cigarette burn. He had said he was smoking one day. He was trying to be like Eddie Van Halen, putting his cigarette in there, and yep, sure enough, got it. I was mainly scared that this was just going to reek of smoke because I don't smoke. I don't know anybody that still does, so I don't like having smoky guitars. But thankfully, no bad odors. And on this one, it looks like the truss rod was set like that from the factory. Usually when I consider it limited adjustability, it's like that far. This is a maxed out rod that needs reset, so it is what it is. But once again, you can see the discoloration difference, what it originally looked like versus what it looks like now, because our truss rod cover's not on it. Speaking of which, it's just a blank one with a white layer on the back. Now, moving on to the back, you can see the continuation of the stripes. You can see a little bit more stand rash down here. And the lines are so nice, crisp, and clean. They just kind of bevel over the edge right here. But it looks like whatever they used, it just looks like a gaffing tape or something. Because over the years, it looks like there's like a slight separation where those two might actually meet. Or I could be wrong on that, and that's just the edge. Because the design also continues through the cavity, where it just kind of looks like paint right here. But here's what our control cavity looks like. Again, you can see the coloration difference here because it was covered over by plastic. And oh my goodness, guys, this is not a 1984. This is a 1958? This is a real Carina Explorer. No, I think somebody at CTS messed up that day and transposed the numbers. And sadly, none of the other ones can be read, so maybe they switched manufacturers, but nothing looks touched in here, so who knows? It might just be like this episode where I found a T-top pickup for May 32nd and was likely some sort of an April Fool's joke. But the edges are actually in pretty good shape for an Explorer. Usually they're the first things to get bashed in, especially your lower fin here. I mean, it's got a couple of dings, but nothing major. So basically just whatever this strap discoloration is because it did not come off. And moving up the backside of the neck, nope, stand rash didn't come off either. You could re-clear coat the thing to get rid of it, but then you lose your aging, so it's just not worth doing. But our serial number on this one dates to very early 1985, the 23rd day of the year, 549th in production, it says. Custom shop edition. But the owner said he purchased this in 1985 at Guitar Center, so I've been getting lucky lately finding original owner Explorers. It's always fun when you buy from the original owner, because sometimes they have a tail. I didn't get too much out of him, though, besides I bought it, didn't play it too much, but he said he stored this without strings for quite some time, so I was kind of scared the neck might be warped. The best way to store a guitar, in my opinion, is with string tension, because it's designed to have it. But here you can see all those worming marks I was talking about. They're not overly obvious unless you start looking for them. Looking under blacklight here, everything is looking the way I would expect to see, nice and evenly aged. I guess that's the important thing on these things. They're going to yellow over time, but I like it when they're nice and even, because sometimes if you have like a worn in area, it starts to mess with the vibe of it. That's why I'm not 100% sure even on my Scorpion's Flying V, because it kind of has a weird area on it, but this one's looking good. We can see our cigarette burn right there, but everything else is looking all right. And ooh, interesting, we did find something. He must have had something in the case for an extended period of time that slightly affected the nitro, but thankfully, I don't see that in normal lighting situations. That's why you blacklight a guitar, so you can see things that you don't normally see. And again, that's just strap residue. Unfortunately, it's in the finish. It does not come off. And again, stand rash. But it's not looking like any breaks, cracks, or repairs on this one. So we are all fine and dandy. All said and done, this one is 7 pounds, 10.2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Isn't this just a fun guitar? This is one of my favorite Explorers I've had. Not because it necessarily plays that great, like it's really hard to do bends on this thing because the frets are just so small. I mean, they're not worn, they were just low, wide frets to begin with. Doesn't pair so well with super big bends. Dirty Fingers are pretty hot pickups. I mean, this bridge is just screaming good. But the neck is also pretty good. could go on with that for days. Let's get some clean tones going on. Now that we know all about Matthias Job's signature guitar color, I guess you could say. What are my final thoughts on this? Man, this is just the best Explorer. I don't know what it is about it because I don't have any like nostalgic feelings to this. It's just triple stripes with another stripe over here. I don't know. Something about it is just insanely cool to me. So I am very happy to have one of these in my collection, especially in a very nice condition. It's not perfect, but then again, when it comes to these kinds of guitars, finding perfect, very difficult because most people thrash these things on stage or have heavily used them. So I'm very appreciative of the viewer who linked me up with the original owner of this one and for the original owner selling it to me, because I'm going to have some good fun with this even off camera because it's just a great example of one of these. The pickups in this set are really good. That's what I found with Dirty Fingers. Sometimes the sets will sound fantastic because they'll slightly mellowed out with age. Other ones, they're a little bit too aggressive. This one was just perfect for what I was trying to do with this. Pretty much the only thing I don't like about this guitar is the teeny tiny fret wire for the style of music I'm trying to play with this. Normally, I'm okay with the Norland era style frets, but these big bends with Scorpion songs, just not quite cutting it on this one. But that matching white headstock is so beautiful on this. It's kind of dorky though, because there's one area up here that's still perfectly white. I don't know why. That's just how it is. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.